Good evening, and I'd like to call to order the committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, May 26, 2015. Can I have a roll call, Mr. Dean?
Certainly can. Simmons?
Yes, here.
Odom? Carroll? Here. Marks? Present. Horace? Here. Huckabee? Here. Paredes?
Here. And we have a quorum, quorum is present. First on our list is public comments. And do we have anyone that signed up?
What you see?
No public comments? All right, well, thank you. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation and discussions of bids for Serena Hills, Fulton Hills asphalt projects. Mr. Duff.
Yes, thank you. Before we have Mr. Regal come up and discuss this, I want to know, is there a time where the board we can get together? I want to take you on a tour of that new addition. If there's a time, how do you want to do that? I know that everybody's at work, so we can do it at night, whatever's convenient, but it's really shaping up nicely.
Be great to come in.
I'm free all next week. I will open it up to there.
Good. All right, so can I ask Kathy to send some dates and times out next week?
Sounds great.
Good. All right. Thank you. Write that down. All right. This is very good news. I'm very pleased with the bids that came in. So, Mr. Regal, if you'd come up and explain to the board, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening, everybody. By the way, before I forget, we'd be happy to accompany you on the tour and act as kind of a quasi-tour if you would like.
We will let you know. Yeah, we definitely get there as well.
It's not that we'd like to show it off or anything.
Yeah.
I want to talk this evening very briefly about the bids that we received for the paving work at Flossmoor and Serena. As Mr. Dutzer mentioned, it is good news. The estimate that we had for this work was, I believe, in excess of twice what the low bid actually came in. So, we're very pleased with the results. We had 3 bidders, and I believe you've got our recommendation letter and probably the bid tabulation sheet that went along with it. And you'll see that we did receive 3 bids, and a low bid at $189,232, and then the high bid at $255,685, and one in between. So as we approach, summer, paving season is somewhat limited in the Midwest and Chicago area. So we sometimes tend to get a little bit anxious as we get closer to summer and have projects like this out to bid. And but nonetheless, we're very pleased with the number of bidders we had again, as well as the fact that they did. We've spoken with Pavement Systems Inc., the apparent low bidder. We've also talked to a couple of their references. They get very good marks. And in our conversations with them, we get a very thorough understanding of the scope of the work and the parameters that we expect to achieve. So with that said, it's our recommendation to the board that you make the award to Pavement Systems. Now, there was one alternate bid, and we have liquidated damages as part of this contract, as we have with the other contracts as well, $1,000 a day. And the intent there is if the contractor fails to achieve the substantial completion date, in other words, the date when you can use this, in this case, the parking lots, there's a charge to them, a back charge of $1,000 a day for every day beyond that date. Now, the 2 other bidders did not list dollar value for that alternate. In other words, there was no change in cost, whether you eliminated it or not. Pavement Systems gave a deduct of $1,000 if we eliminated the penalty clause of $1,000 a day. So I'm not too sure how to interpret that exactly. It's amounts to the cost for 1 day beyond the schedule. It's our recommendation that while $1,000 is no small sum, that having that leverage, and things can happen during the summer when it comes to paving, weather, rain can affect the work. If they pick up more work along the way, there may be something that in their mind is a higher priority than your project, and we don't want that to happen. So it would be our recommendation that you do not accept that offer. Leave the penalty in the contract as an insurance policy in case something were to come along. We want to make sure that they treat your project with the highest priority, and if they did it, then we're supposed to.
I'm sorry, did you say that you do not recommend that we include the penalty in there?
No, I recommend that you do not accept the alternate.
Oh,
The alternate was to do away with the penalty clause. We want to leave it in there.
okay.
Any questions?
So one, are any of the bids local, from local vendors?
You know, to be honest with you, pavement systems, I don't know exactly where they are. Maybe it's not. Actually, paving, I honestly don't know. Pavement systems is in one of the nearby suburbs. I don't think they're here.
You know what might help, Mr. Ferris, could you maybe give a little bit of background on how we seek bids for jobs that go out to bid, what kind of jobs we send out to bid, and how we get the bids? That might, and we've got 2 new board members, we haven't been experienced, they haven't been exposed to this ever, so that's not fair. We should probably, we'll learn on the job here a little bit. Good question.
I'd be happy to speak to that if you'd like.
Okay.
In the state of Illinois, school projects, there's a very strict code that governs how you seek bids. And it requires that you publish, the school district publishes an advertisement for bid, local bid. And that's what the statute says. What we do is we send out copies of the bid documents or notice that the bid documents are going to be available to, I believe, 5 different plan rooms all across Northern Illinois. Plan rooms are places where contractors can go and look at the documents, or they can subscribe to a service and they can see them there. We also post it on our website. And, you know, Gabby Paving, for example, one of the bidders here is actually doing some work, has done work in the district, and is doing work over Parker right now. So, and we, if you were to go to our website, you would see a bid register on there. While we send the plans to 5 plan rooms, I think there are another 3 or 4 who pretty routinely will log in and download those plans. And what happens then is contractors, again, will subscribe to that particular plan room, and they pay a fee to do that. That plan room will make those plans available to them. So there really isn't, I'm not sure how much more could be done to really get the word out on the street, so to speak, as far as the project being available. And we would always encourage local participation.
And we've had a lot of local recently that have done jobs or projects for us as well.
Yeah. And there are requirements in contractors. The projects have to be bonded. So they have to be bondable. They have to have a certain level of insurance, and that's all legal protection.
The question I had, you were saying you don't recommend that we take the penalty out. So the minus the $1,000 that's showing there, then we would put that back in since we are not accepting.
Yes, you're going to award on the basis of their base bid. If you were to take that alternative, it would reduce that by $1,000.
Quick question, do we know anybody that they have done work for?
Mokina.
Okina.
Yeah, and I spoke to them actually. And we had nothing bad to say at all. They had money. The final question is always, would you have my project again, or would you hesitate to have them? The answer was no. No, they wouldn't hesitate. Yes, they would have it. So.
Are there any further questions? Well, thank you very much. I sure appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the 2015-2016 tentative budget.
Ms. LaBella, if you would present the information to the Board of Education, we appreciate it.
Okay, this is about as tentative as you can get. It is super tentative. It is so tentative, I don't even want to call it tentative. There is so much going on right now, I can't even keep track. My emails keep buzzing. There are more proposals going on down in Springfield than you can imagine. I have seen proposals with us being $1 million losers. I have seen the best case proposals so far as us being a $100,000 winner. So, flat would be awesome at this point. That's kind of where we're at. We don't even have good levy numbers yet. But at 3:15 this afternoon, I got an email from the Cook County Court that says levy numbers will be out on Friday. So, like I said, this doesn't get any more tentative than what you've got here. However, I'm kind of a purist. I do like to start the fiscal year on July 1st with a tentative budget from the board giving me authority to start spending money. A lot of school districts do not do tentative budget until August. Like I said, I'm a purist. I do like, if I'm going to start spending money, that you've given us a blessing that says, go ahead, start with this. Okay. Catherine. Let's start with the revenues. And again, very tentative state. They're increasing right now by 0.89%. What is that made up of? Really? That's made up of your local property taxes, an increase there, okay? We have held all state revenues flat. It is looking at a general state aid proration of 90%. We are being told that 90% is the proration that they're looking at. I cannot answer how they get to 90% when they're at 87% this year and they have less revenues than last. I don't know. But that's what the state board is saying right now. So we threw in 90%. I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't think it's going to materialize, but we'll see what happens. On federal revenues, so far we've kind of based it on allocations. Allocations coming in right now, I'll tell you, we're a little under on the federal side. And on the state, they're about flat. Okay. All right, Catherine. On your expenditure side, you have decreased by 4.35%, mostly due to all of the decisions you made last several board meetings. Our expenditures that you'll see here do not include construction costs. We pulled that out and put it aside because remember, you bonded for that. So you're not going to see a pretty revenue number matching up with an expenditure number. It's just kind of sitting there on the side, so we're not even going to look at that. You're on budget, you are on time, and we'll leave it at that for a moment. There is an intended cash payment of $100,000 on your bond and interest payment. That was intended. We did that when we put on the bonds very intentionally to get that rate slowly ramping up before we get right back to where we were pre this bond issue. Okay, so we get right back to our debt service extension base, but we kind of ramped it up. We used $200,000 of cash last year. We'll use $100,000 this year, and then the following year will be completely on the levy again. Got it. So here's what it looks like. Right now, remember this year we were looking at a budget of about $1.5 million deficit. Where we're at right now is about $800,000 deficit, but those numbers are real tentative. We're not quite there yet. We have included all normal payrolls in the estimates, but all expenditures haven't come through yet, including an interest payment on bonds. So we're going to probably be pretty close to that $1.5 million deficit. However, right now, based on we have moved everybody up a step. For next year, we have run all of the deductions, so all of their health insurance and so on, which at 0% increase was huge help. All of the cuts that you've talked about, so we have some vacancies in there, still a bit higher, but we've slashed 6 routes off of the buses, keeping state revenues flat. Right now, you're in a positive position by a little under $500,000, $400,000. This is going to be your best case scenario. I am really uncomfortable with what the state's going to come up with. Only one model so far looks good for us. Everything else looks like that. I am hoping that the good for us is the one that comes through, but anything's going to happen downstream. Again, the best case model gave additional funding to education. And the first question all we had was, and where is the money coming from? Because you haven't brought the state income tax back up again, and you can't pay the what you got now. So where is the additional revenue coming from? And nobody seems to have a good answer on that. So kind of stay tuned, more to come. They're set to adjourn on the 31st. I think that'll be a small miracle if they get that done too. So this is where we stand for the moment. So what comes next? You'll adopt this real rough so that we can start running payrolls and so on July 1st. Over the next several months, we're going to firm everything up. At your July board meeting, I am going to give you the binder that has the entire budget in it. All revenues, what it is that, the explanation of every revenue, what it is our budget is, what it is we're projecting. For all the expenditures, it'll go by function, an explanation of what's in those functions, an explanation of everything that we budgeted in. This year, what we're adding to the packet is you are going to see 7 years of actual data for each function. This year's estimated ending, and then the projected, what our budget is. In August, we're planning on presenting that entire thing to you, and we are also hoping to have PMA with us as well, picking up from our budget numbers, which will coincide with theirs, and giving you 4 years projection based on assumptions as well. So we're hoping to give you all of that at the August CAL. You will have a month then to digest that whole book in July. Anyone who wants to come and talk to me in person, please feel free to pick up the phone, come on in, and we can talk about anything you want, and then I'll present in August. And then you will have September 14th will be your final approval of budget. Okay.
Real quick question, board, as we bring up board PD. I have to register professional development. For the tri-conference, for example, we need to, in July that comes out, we need to order, or make sure we know how many people are going to that. And this is new to the board, and I'll talk about this during orientation. But I have to be able to send to the state or ISB how many people are going to be attending, et cetera. But what we need to know for the budget, a little bit about what types of PD we're planning for the Board of Education. Do you want us to budget what we had last year? Do you want us to take some away? Do you want us to add some? That's up to the board, and that's a discussion that the board has to have to let us know as far as alignment.
The only thing you also need to remember when you do that is Board of Education expenditures fall under the administrative cost cap, which means you can increase by 5%.
That's all we can, or else we'd have to have a hearing.
Yeah.
Fred, I have one question, which did we go, and I just have to ask you, did we, I don't know where we are on our budget this year for PD, like, did we spend what we actually had allotted for personal development and?
Honestly, I'm not sure exactly where you are.
Okay, I mean, you just.
I think we're a little bit less, so if we kept it the
I think you're a
same.
little under right now.
Okay.
You know, so you can add about another 5% onto that if you choose to go to more than what you historically gone to.
Yeah.
But again, we'll have to watch it within that cap.
And this is, can we go back to that slide, just for this, I know we just discussing, the actual, okay. So with this in the budget, I know you said it's best case scenario, if it came in like at 85, as opposed to the 90, closer to where we are, 87, even under, does that make a significant, is that put us now in the rate, or do you know, like, I don't want to ask you what worst case scenario is, because that could be just horrible, but.
Worst case scenario, in my opinion, puts you back about the situation you are this year. I don't think it gets any worse than that. And again, we still have the reserves to get us, to hold us until we can really figure this thing out, but then you're looking at more of the uncomfortableness, you know, of looking at everything like we did.
Fran, is that the 77% GSA reimbursement or prorate?
The 77%, there's two different calculations on the 77% right now. Right now, general state aid is prorated across the board. So whatever it is you were supposed to get, they cut it to 87% to get that. There is now another calculation out there that is doing a proration based on the amount that you receive on a per pupil basis, not total amount of general state aid. We are still losers on that calculation, but we're about as close to the break-even point as you can get. So we're right there. It's essentially a wash for us if they go on per pupil. So for us, it's 6.5 than the other. For some districts, it makes a significant change. And the reason that they're looking at doing it on a per pupil basis, and I believe that they probably will go that way if they decide to, if they're going to have to prorate general state aid, is because the school districts that are very heavily reliant on general state aid don't get hit nearly as hard. They'll actually see an increase in their revenues. It is the school districts that are almost completely property tax reliant would see almost their general state aid go away. But for a lot of those districts, they don't rely on it, so it's not that big of a deal. And when you start looking at especially a lot of the south suburbs, a prorated based on per pupil is much more beneficial for them. So those, again, are some of the things that are still being tossed around downstate, both at the state board level and at the legislative. So honestly, I wish I could tell you, but there's so many proposals out there right now, so many people being proponents of different ones, depending on where you come from and who your constituency is.
And just as the final one for this, it was going back to a conversation we had had before about looking at the districts that had their fund balance. Now the fund balance kind of being looked at as being an issue. Is that still?
I have not heard anything recently.
Okay.
Not heard anything recently. Their first eyes were on the municipalities, and that's not come through for the municipalities. I think what was happening, the schools are getting cautious based on the fact that they're looking at the municipalities first. If we see something happen with them, then I'm going to say we better start panicking a little bit. But until we see something happen with them, it's just something to keep in our mind.
Yeah, I think we should keep that in the back of our minds.
Would you share what percentage of our revenues are property tax driven as opposed to state?
We are mostly, we are in the high 7s and high 20s when it comes to general state revenues. And it shifts a little year to year depending on funding, et cetera. We are not as heavily property taxed as some, but we are certainly not a general state aid district either. We are the majority is still property taxes, which is why when they start talking about prorating by per pupil, we kind of slide in right under the radar. We're kind of okay. For some districts, it would cost a lot. For some districts, it would mean a lot, but we're kind of at that break-even point. So it's not going to affect us nearly as much. And again, there's going to be a lot coming, and the book that we're going to give you is going to be, it's very comprehensive, but that's why we kind of give you a month to digest it, because there's a lot in there. And I would encourage you to, email me, call me, set up a time, whatever you want to do, because if we get PMA, which I'm sure we will, if Mike comes in, it's a long presentation, so I will apologize for that up front, but then I won't apologize for it up front because it's good information that you need. Okay?
Is there any resources that you could push out to the new board members?
Sure. Let me send you some links. There's also a couple of books that you may want to get through IASB. They put out a couple of really good books. The one book I've relied on a lot, it actually shamelessly cut and pasted a lot of stuff out of the book into the document that you're going to get, a book by James Spreads. And I have given him acknowledgement. But it goes through a lot of the funding, and it's a really good comprehensive book. So why don't I get you the link, and anyone who wants those books ordered, I'm sure we can order for the book.
Yeah, there's another book from Kirsten. It's excellent, just recently published. That's
so there's
more,
a bunch.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them out there. And you can get his information as good at the moment, but really we're trying to, and we'll start sending you, when we start seeing any legislation that looks like it's really got legs, we'll start pushing some stuff out to you then.
There's some good resources on ISB as well.
Oh, yeah.
I sent I think their link or a PDF last week that I think is just a good overview.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, next we have gifted education proposal.
Dr. Ward, if you could please come up. Board of Education, you'll see that we're taking a look at reviewing our ACE program or gifted program. If you remember those people that were on the board, we had a committee that was brought together 4 years ago, and what was developed is what we have at this point. So what we're doing is we're bringing it to you. Dr. Work will discuss it a little bit more, but this is from Northwestern, who are experts in the gifted programs, and we can take questions after.
So a little bit of the history. In the 2011-2012 school year, the Gifted Ad Hoc Committee came back together, and that was the first time in approximately 4 years that the committee had gotten back together to look at the practices of our students who were gifted and talented. And at that time, Mr. Simmons and Leah Bailey Langston were the 2 board members who were on the committee. And we studied the practices of our students and looked at identification as well at that point in time. And at that time, we looked at a level of service model for those students and looked at the kindergarten through 5th grade services. Through the level of service model, with that model, we looked at how you service all, many, some, and few students. And at that time, decided to go with enrichment services, and then looked at humanities and analytical application. Prior to that, we were only servicing students through math acceleration, and then split the services to humanities and to analytical applications so that more students could be encompassed through services looking at our reading and humanities services as well as analytical applications. Also looked at the identification and switched the way that identification was done for those children to try to encompass a fall window and a spring window. And we've been doing that to encompass more children. Then that next year looked at Parker Junior High and added the services to more align with how the high school was doing information with the IB program to try and align the services with the IB. IB program takes 80% of the students and then align with the practices to get in alignment with HF so that 80% of our students were encompassing in our identification. So we were aligning with the HF services. So we knew that we needed to look at those services again. Along with this, the state of Illinois no longer funds for gifted, so there are really no other sources that help with identification. Northwestern is really the only place that you can go to help you with your services. So we contacted the Northwestern Center for Gifted and Talented and had a conversation with them. They came back with a basic level that could look at our program, and they're proposing $6,500 to look at a basic level of review for our program, a comprehensive level, which would be $9,500, and then a comprehensive plus. And the difference between the basic level, comprehensive level, and comprehensive plus would be more testing, testing and professional development, along with some staff needs, parent needs, and observations. Now, with this review, this is more encompassing than the review that we did in 2011 and 2012. They would look at our early entrance program. That is something that we did not even look at or consider when we were reviewing the process in 2011 and 2012. They would also look at something that we didn't look at all, the twice identified, I'm not saying that right now, the twice exceptional. When I was actually teaching special ed, I actually had a student that was twice exceptional. That boy was identified special ed, but was also gifted. That's something that we have never looked at here within our district, and they would actually look at those twice exceptional students. And that's something that they would be able to encompass into our program, and something that we really haven't looked at with our identification procedures. So that's something else that they would be able to help and look at and help us identify, and then really help us look at the different programming. There's full-time gifted services they could look at. There's many different program options that we haven't considered within our district before, and they would help us look at our overall population and then help us determine what would be the best way to service students. So those are some benefits of having Northwestern come in and look at the totality of our program and then help us determine what would be the best way to help us service the students here. Yes.
I was writing down, I'm sorry for with this. The first is, just to be clear, what you're looking at is Northwestern coming in to do an assessment of our current and not, is there an assessment of our current programs, or are they being brought in and potentially looked at as an administrator of an ACE program going forward?
No, they would come in, do a current assessment of what we currently have, and then make recommendations for us to move forward.
Okay, great. And is there a particular reason we're doing this now? Is it just like, okay, it's just time to do this now, we need to look at it?
Correct.
All right, so these questions, the two questions that I have for this may not be able to be answered tonight. I was just going to put out there. We're really talking about a lot of the ACE program and moving towards Parker too. And I'm wondering if we've done an assessment of how many individuals that we've identified through the ACE program or gifted program and were accepted into the IB program at Parker, at HF, to see if I don't know, preparing our students for the IB program, how they're currently doing in the IB program, and if there are individuals that were not identified through us in the AC program that may be in the IB program, and if we could start, if we looked at it on our own before they got here, I just would be interested in that kind of that path, and who've done that.
No, we haven't done that. What I do know is that feedback that we get from HF is that our kids are doing well that go there. But if you're looking for exact numbers, what we do is every year they do ask us for our students who we have identified, and we give them all of that information. So they do ask us for a report of our identified students, and we give them that every year.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking to go forward this, but as they're doing that assessment, some of the questions or critiques have still come back about how are kids selected for this ACE program, and are we what about those who are kind of on the cusp of right there? Are we providing enough services, and are we preparing them for the IB program? So we're going in looking at an outside agency to come in and spend money to do an assessment, which we don't know what the cost long. I would be just interested in that direct path. That's something we're saying the IB program is something that's being touted if our ACE program right now, as it stands, is really getting those kids there. So I would like to see data around that, because I think it would be helpful more than just, they're doing well. Because I just don't know. And when I saw this presentation coming up before, those were questions I just came out and had. So that's something, I don't know if that's too much to ask. I don't know how hard it is, or if it's something that maybe you can ask the town or something. It is something that I requested. I know the board has requested, but it would just be great information so people may have questions about our ACE program and whether or not we're preparing students. It would be helpful to know that our kids are doing it.
We can reach out to them. My understanding of our current ACE program was to help to guide those kids into the IB program.
Right, that's where this is coming from.
I think there are two parts to that. What you're looking for. The other piece would be families that chose not to participate in the IB program.
Yeah, because
and never get dropped out again. Because I don't want to make the assumption that the IB program is everyone's choice.
No, and it's not. And I know some very capable students that say, that it's very directed, and I think it's just as many honors program and not be in the IB, that would be fine too. But it's right now, it's just a lot of information around that. And it's not even a critique of us, it's just looking at if this is one of the things we're talking about, being able to make that line, or again,
and some of it is about strengthening our own programs separate from that IB program as well. So a lot of it is the trajectory to them, but some of it is also strengthening our program. Some of it is more about, how can we better service our children here, and some of it is about that as well as that preparation too. So I think some of it is, what can we also do better to service our students here? And are we doing enough? Because we do have a high achieving population, and I know a lot of the conversations that I have with parents, we do have a number of students who sometimes are not qualifying into that humanities and analytical application. And this would also help, are we working with that enrichment, and are we doing enough with those differentiation pieces? And some of this would help with our program as well, because we do have a lot of those high achievers, and this audit would also help with that program as well. So some of it is about strengthening our core, and as we have gone through with our core, and we've worked a lot with our interventions, and this would also help a lot with our tier 1, 2, and 3 as we worked through our instructional programming. So a lot of it would also benefit. So as we appreciate in our moving up and going to HF, a lot of it could also help with our core as well.
So, and if it's just fair, just, I'm going to, want to make sure that my response to it is a fair request, and it's something that we can even get that information as we start to look at this, because it'll help me make that. And I know we need, we get assessment, so the question is whether or not we can get data to say, is there information about our current identified ACE students moving to HF and their, and how they're doing it, being accepted into the IB program, whether they choose to do it or not. It's just kind of whether or not they're being accepted into the IB program, how they're possibly doing it. I'm just looking at that piece of it. And I'm wondering, what is it fair to ask in a separate place? Is it the right place? Can we get the information just so that we have some data to look at?
We can contact them. I think more though, you want IB as well as those kids that are in the college track as well.
I think that, certainly we should see where are these kids going, and as much data as we can get, in a reasonable time frame, and effort level. I think it would certainly help to measure our success with our own program, moving forward with something that's a little new.
And these are distinct, and this is separate from this conversation, but I love the fact that Northwestern are coming in and having an outside eye. That question just came into my head based on the presentation.
One of the things to our ACE program and how it's going now, I know that, there's some tweaks that we need to make with it, et cetera, but there's about 5 to 6 children in our school district that are very bright in math, extremely bright. And we have worked diligently with their families, with the children. We've advanced them. There's one child I know that will probably need to be in college math before they're finished with high school. So we worked with those parents and the families extremely well, and we will continue to do that. So my question would be, we have an option where we can do this, or we can take a look at what we currently have. We can bring an ad hoc committee together again. We can save the money, and we can move that way, but it may be structured a lot differently.
I like the fleshing that out. I like the bringing that out and talking about it. So I heard you say a couple things during the presentation. One of which was there were some things we weren't doing, and they told us about doing them. Which, sorry, that's okay. Which begs the question, why don't we do them? What does this lend that we don't have the ability to do? We've been running a gifted program in the district at least for 15, 20 years, to different levels of success, I would imagine, or people's pleasure with it, but I don't know that we lack. We're full of professional teachers, well-trained, well-educated professional educators. What do we lack that we would be gaining?
Some of it with the early entrance and some of it with twice exceptional. It might be, and it is, lack of experience or information as far as what are some other ways and information to go about having students come in with different policies and procedures for early entrance. And so they have more experience and more ways to go about having kids come in with early entrance policies, and would it have a broader base, if you will, and more ways for us to say these are different options for early entrance, and give us those instead of us having to go do a whole bunch of research.
So define early entrance for me.
So early entrance are the students who come to us before turning 5 on September 1st. And so currently, parents come to us and they have to come to us by April 1st and let us know we are interested in having our child come to kindergarten and or first grade by, and their birthday has to be after September 1st or September 2nd, but prior to November 1st. And then within that policy then, the parents have to pay for psychological testing. And currently our policy says that their IQ has to be a certain IQ to enter between that time period. Now, there's a lot of theory behind that that says that we could have some biases by having that IQ at that level that we currently have it at. And so Northwestern has done some study and has done some research saying that there might be other policies and other practices that we could let children in without that IQ.
How many parents come to us?
It depends on the year. Sometimes I have upwards of 10, sometimes I only have 2. So it really depends on the year as to how many approach to come in for that early entrance. And then it also depends on if it's a kindergartner or a first grader. So it's dependent, and then because of our policy, sometimes with first grade, they can have some different qualifications to come in for first grade if they've attended a kindergarten elsewhere. So there's some different requirements within our policy. So I would like the opportunity to explore whether there are some different options or avenues as far as that early entrance to see, where do we stand with that? With the twice exceptional, we don't have any students currently in our district twice exceptional in the gifted program. Is that an anomaly, or is that something that,
What percentage of the school age population is
twice exceptional?
Twice exceptional.
Again, it depends. It could be,
Not ours, but
yeah, I mean,
across the board.
overall, it could be as low as, 2 to 3 kids, or, so it's not a high population, but, are we missing any students? And I it is a small population, but.
So because we have to allocate resources, what the concern I would share is we're looking at a large dollar per student for two things that I don't see really have a lot to do with educating the majority of our kids who are in a GET program. We're talking about identifying a few kids coming whose parents would like them to enter kindergarten early for a variety of reasons, perhaps not always because they're exceptionally talented at 5 years old.
Those are just.
And the other, well, but
Right.
there are two which I think are valid to discuss. What I would like to hear is that this blows the socks off of anything we in our district can do, and this is exactly why we should spend this amount of money, because our kids will benefit exponentially from the education we'll be able to provide for them.
two others.
I'm not seeing this in the presentation, and I'm
Well,
not-
if I can go.
Yeah, please do.
Further.
Sell me.
The other thing that I would like to see is if we could really look at a non-biased form of testing. And right now, I'm not really sure if the NAC is doing that. And that was one of the things we were looking at for the NAC, and Mr. Simmons could remember, because that was one of the only forms of testing that was out there that was looking at a non-bias, because we do have the Hispanic form, and we do not currently have a lot of our Hispanic students who are in. And when Northwestern was looking at our population, they were very concerned that we did not have any of our ELL population in our gifted programming, and that is another reason to do that. And then also, if you look at our demographics do not match what our gifted population is, and that was another concern. So them coming in and looking at our identification procedures would also help to see, because our gifted population is not commensurate with our demographics either. So there are other reasons for them to come in and help us again with that identification.
How does our gifted population reflect nationally normed demographics?
That's something else that they would be able to come in and look at that, and once we would get into here, currently they don't equal at all.
Wait, nationally normed or our personal demographics?
Our
Those are two
personal
different things.
demographics.
That's not my question. My question is, where do we fit on a nationally normed level?
That I don't know right now.
I think that, first of all, I want to say that Northwestern has an excellent program. And that it seems to me, if I can summarize that, our current gifted program is based on our ad hoc committee. And I'm sure Mr. Simmons and Ms. Langston were excellent on that. And it seems like we've been evolving over the last couple of years. And I also think that, at some point, I definitely think it's worthwhile to have an outside consultant come in and give their opinion. Again, it's worth discussion. But I guess for me, I would be more inclined to have somebody who is really good in this area of expertise that they have to come in and do the thing that they do best to help guide us for the future. If not every year, certainly every once in a while. And it doesn't seem like we've had a consultant come in who just does this on too regular basis. And I think if you look at the cost split over 4 years even, I think that it's certainly a worthwhile investment. Looking at the twice exceptional students, certainly our goal as a school district should always be to serve the needs of all of our students. And, not saying to the twice exceptional, who I personally work with currently. This year I've worked with a lot of twice exceptional students. And the fact of the matter is that they're different from a lot of the students who are labeled as special needs and students who are typically labeled as the gifted students. And even within the twice exceptional, there's a broad spectrum. 50% roughly students who are in special ed programs in the United States are in there for ADHD. Kids who are gifted ADHD have much different needs than kids who have like a traumatic brain injury and are struggling through cognitive skills. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of kids in gifted programs who are, we say, oh, this kid's clearly, ADHD or you need something or there's something going on. And frequently I have seen where, faculties get very frustrated with students and don't really know how to address them in a way that is really meeting the needs of the student. So from my perspective, we work with kids who are twice exceptional and in special ed, and looking at this as an outside consultant coming in, really, not every year, but every once in a while for a tune-up. I think that this really looks like a worthwhile investment.
So I have a couple questions. So was the idea that after this assessment is done, then you would bring it back here and a committee would be formed again, like before, to assess all of the data and figure out the next steps?
So they would provide recommendations, and then the ad hoc committee would pick up and then work from that point forward. And so that's exactly what would happen. So we would pick up our work based on their recommendations. Of course, they would like to, do like a year 2, a year 3, a year 4. That's not something that we have to commit to at all. Of course, they would like to do continued work, but definitely take their recommendations, definitely have them. My recommendations would be definitely to give us information on how we do identification, definitely give us recommendations for our programming. you know, definitely get input from our parents as to things that they would like to see. You know, then as far as like professional development, things like that, if we want to send our teachers for professional development, they have that all the time. And I think that's things that we can see all the time, and those are offerings that, you know, we could choose to have anyone go to. But I would like to get information on how we do the identification as far as the Z-score, see if they have, you know, different ways for identification, different ways for recommendation, and different ways for programming. And I know Mrs. Lavella would definitely like to hear that, because that's something that she is saying as far as what our expenditures are for how we educate gifted. So I mean, those are things that, you know, I would like to hear what their recommendations are. And that gifted ad hoc committee has been something that has been very good for our district. That is one of the committees that we have a lot of parent participation on. And I think that has been something that has been very good. They've been a very good advisory board for our district. And so that is something that I would like to see continue, because I think that has been very good and very important to get that feedback yearly.
So would
I'm
there-
thinking that the other thought, I'm sorry, Michelle, I didn't know you had a follow-up. The other thought that comes to mind, being on the board and then being, you know, being in the district for 19 years, is the idea of this whole, what is it? This whole, oh, this is special. These people, this program is not unveiled, and the people who are making the decisions and determinations have some kind of agenda, and they're biased, and our children are not actually, the proper children are not getting screened and not getting in the program. And I think that having an outside source will take away all of that suspicion of the standard in the program and how children are getting into the program, are screened in, and they make their way into the program. Because ever from the beginning of time, since I've been here, that's always a question. And then we thought, a couple of years ago when we did the ad hoc committee, that, you know, that veil of suspicion would be released, because parents from all over the district would be on the ad hoc committee, and everyone would, you know, discuss it and come up with the standard. And still, all you hear is the criticism about how children are screened into the program, into the gifted program, into the ACE program. There is still that question and still that suspicion and non-acceptance of, okay, yes, your child is special, and we know all of our children are special, but we still have to have a standard, and this is the best standard. And I think that an outside organization coming up and helping us through having that standard is valuable. Hopefully, I hope, because we thought 2 years ago that having the whole community, anybody who wanted to be on the committee, still everyone is, oh, it's not for us, they're screening us out, there's some type of system that keeps us from getting in, you know, when the bottom line comes down. I have a serious concern about the fact that our demographics are showing that, you know, the Hispanic children are not testing in, and based on the Z percentage, with the 5% or whatever it is. And if there's another way that we should look at this, because we thought at the time that was like the perfect system, you know, to use. But when you look at it, is it really? Because are we saying that we have no Hispanic children that are gifted? I mean, I know that that's not what our district is saying, and that's not what we stand for. So how do we come up with another system that is, you know, has some integrity behind it, like Northwestern?
How many different groups did that? So the ad hoc, so walk me through how this process was. The ad hoc committee met, they reviewed different groups, they chose Center for Talented and Gifted out of all the groups that they reviewed.
Well, there is really no one, because since the state of Illinois has cut funding for gifted and talented, Northwestern Center for Gifted and Talented really is the only one
In the state. You only went to the state of Illinois.
Yeah, I didn't go outside Illinois. So Northwestern is really the only one out there. The Illinois Center, or the Illinois Association for Gifted Children, is an affiliate of the National Association for Gifted Children. And again, they point back to Northwestern. So the only other thing that is really out there is EMSA. EMSA really doesn't do program evaluations. They, when you talk to them, you know, they have programs and everything that they're happy to partner with schools with, but for program evaluations, they recommend Northwestern as well. So Northwestern is really the only thing out there to help with program evaluations.
So,
I'm sorry, so right here, the proposal is for an amount not to exceed $13,500. But then looking under the base cost, what does that match up with? There's a basic level review, a comprehensive, and a comprehensive plus. But I see the comprehensive plus is at $13,500.
It will go over that, and
Yeah.
so I don't think we need everything on that comprehensive plus review. So what I would recommend is, and what I could do is, I would call Northwestern, and there are 2 people, and we could basically pick and choose from what is on the model. And there are things that I like on the middle model, but I still think that there are a couple things on the comprehensive level that we could take off. And so it is still up for negotiation with them on what we could go with on the middle model and things to take off. I think there, so we could still talk about, like, if the board would like to see, you know, information as far as, you know, how do we want that parent input? I think we need that parent input. What would we like to see? Do we want them to talk to students? So it would still be, you know, what are some things that we want to see happen? Do we want them to have a parent meeting? It's that type of information that we would talk about, and what do we want to see happen? What type of information would we like to gain from this?
Okay, and one other thing, if you're going to be providing some more information, other districts who have used them to perform any of these 3 levels of service, maybe districts close to us, maybe a good sampling of districts throughout the area.
When they did, they're like, oh, this is far away, so they've mainly been in some Lake and DuPage, and then some Cook County schools.
I would preferably like to see schools with low-income numbers that try to come close to what we have, and demographics that look a little more like us. I don't know that I'm terribly comfortable comparing us with Lake Forest's student population. I don't think that's going to help us a whole lot.
Dr. Work, it might be a good starting point to look at the list of students, or I'm sorry, list of schools that we compared ourselves to last year. Probably could cut off at the very end, you know,
Sure.
of each side, but
Okay.
I'd like to add just one opinion in there too. I think as we look at our school district, and we have said that our district is compared to the districts in the page, we have a very diverse population here, but we have some of the very high upper income piece, and then also low income, and I'm not sure if I would feel comfortable saying that we're just going to look at low income, so I'm just different.
I'm not saying low income, I'm saying numbers that would
We said
mirror what we have.
reflected, but I think that where we are looking to compare our school system, the type of districts, the type of outcomes we're looking at, I think it's still a valuable piece of information. I don't want to cut them out.
I don't disagree with that, but when we go to look at how many students we're serving, I think the number 1 indicator of student achievement is 2 parents who have attained the highest level of education possible. That's what Dr. Graham's told us, that's what all the studies back up. So there are some pieces that we need to look a little more apples to apples than just any district that uses this, just, I think, to get the best results for us. So to Mr. Freitas' point, there is that information included in the list that we gave to Dr. Graham. Now, we picked districts that we wanted to look like, but they didn't all look like us. So the student achievement looked like what we wanted, but I think for these purposes, the district needs to look as much as we can like our district. I think that would give us the answer, a little bit better information. I'd also like to know what those districts thought about the service they received and the value proposition that it offers.
Sure. I don't want to get on a different conversation, but I'm a little comfortable with that piece, and maybe I'm probably misunderstanding that, but I think one of the challenges we have is perception here that we're now dealing with a Title I district, a low-income district, and that there's some correlation between those pieces. I want to make sure that we're looking at the children here, regardless sometimes of their income, that they can be gifted, and I want to make sure that we're not
Absolutely.
in that conversation.
But we also would be better served, I think, if we looked at districts that were closer to us in all of the factors that contribute to educational success and native intelligence. And a gifted child is the beneficiary of a really lovely genetic soup on top of some other things. So we can't extrapolate for the genetic soup that they get, but there are some things that statisticians look at when they do these numbers, like Dr. Graham's gone on ad infinitum with us, that I think would be useful as we're looking at this.
I think when Dr. Graham also, we have a very unique district, and that's why I want to make sure that we're not going to, there's not a lot of districts out here that have the highest upper echelon of the income of Illinois, and then some of the lowest. And we're extremely wonderfully diverse community. I just think that we will be limiting ourselves to the population because if somebody can name one, I think that was one of the things Dr. Graham brought up, that we are very unique. And other districts are looking at us to say how we're going to handle this shift and where we are. And I just want to make sure that our assessments are built upon that.
But if our question is like what percentage of kids we're identifying, then that is probably going to be reflected in populations that look like ours. If we're looking at a district that has no ELL kids, and a district that has all ELL kids, and we find that those numbers are different, their ID population is different for whatever reason, and we pick our district to compare them to one or the other, we're going to get skewed results.
Yeah, I'm not saying one or the other. I just want to make sure that they're not left out of.
No, I think we should look at ourselves, but we should be aware that we want to mirror what we are.
Can I interject with pause that I think that any information that you can get would be great. With that, as soon as we can get that, it would be helpful.
Thank you, Steve.
2 questions before we move on, that's all right.
Sure.
Number 1, is there a time frame meeting back in Northwestern on about this?
I can communicate with them, say that I brought this up this evening, I have some questions to answer for the board, and then I will be back in touch with them as soon as I can provide the board with that information.
Okay,
And
number-
then ask them, just to hold on, so.
Okay, number 2, board direction on this. I've heard a lot today, so I need to hear with one voice. What does the board want to do? You want us to bring back more information and have more of a discussion?
I think that's what the consensus is. I don't know what you're hearing, but everyone said they wanted more.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's the consensus.
I think does anyone disagree with that? Okay, I think that's the consensus.
Okay.
The other thing is, I think we should still look to see where our kids have gone on in our program, and just have an idea of how effective or what are some of the trends we see as kids move forward, and just add that to our.
Sure. Mr. Dusty, you got all those questions?
I do, yeah.
I know, I said that.
All right, good. I think we're clear on that.
Okay, next, discussion on junior high science resource purchase.
Yes, for this, I'm glad we have our summer science teachers here tonight. Thank you for coming. We're looking at our science curriculum for next year. Dr. Ork, if you would explain, you've gone through a lot. The teachers are working hard with this. And as you know, board, we have an ELA and we have a math resource committees that are taking place. We have teachers that are looking through the materials. We've had some state representatives that have volunteered their time to come in and talk to us about the mapping. We've been very fortunate in regards to our science, and if you'll explain a little bit, we'd
So
appreciate it.
we have been working on science this year. The state of Illinois is giving us the 15-16 school year to put things in place, and it does not have to actually be in place till the 16-17 year. So our K through 5 had started doing some work last summer, and Parker Junior High has been working on and off since 2012, getting information for science ready. This year, we really started to work very hard. We worked with Patricia Messersmith from the Museum of Science and Industry. We worked on and off with U of I Extension, and we worked on and off with Carol Baker, who was a writer of the NGSS nationally. And then we started working with Tara Kristoff, who is my counterpart in another district, and she's also been employed by ISC4. And that is who has really been working with Parker Junior High. When she started working with Parker Junior High, that is when the integrated units came together for Parker Junior High, and we really started looking at a resource to supplement those units of study. And that is what is in front of you to request to purchase. What integrated units are, it is when the curriculum then spirals and comes back, and the kids will touch upon it in 6th grade, come back again, and touch upon it again in 7th grade and in 8th grade. So no longer will they just be doing earth science, then physical science, then chemistry or biology, and it actually, they circle back again. What the research is stating is that it will really prepare the students as they go on into high school when they do start doing the singular science. So what this resource then does is then supports how those units are then taught. So having said that, I'll just ask if you guys could just say a little bit about the resource.
Well, before that, real quick, this is a follow-up also to the data from Dr. Graham that he's given us, and we're coming back because the data we've been focusing on math and we've been focusing on ELA, and we continue to do that. Science isn't, or the new science standards are coming in effect for 16-17 school year. We're going to be a year ahead of this with the curriculum that we have and with these resources that would be coming in. So that we're using data that has been collected from him, etc. All right, teachers?
We had, when Tara came to speak to us, it was an amazing day. We learned so much about Next Gen and how a shift in our teaching needs to happen, to the point where the 8th grade kind of took it and ran with it. We just started a unit on sound.
Start now.
Yeah, so we thought, okay, let's do it now. So we were starting a unit on sound, and Amy had sample books, and I stuffed those sample books into my car, and we took them back to Parker and fully immersed ourselves in. We stopped what we were doing. We were doing chapter 1, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to switch and do, take these books and start working with them. And we did, it's very heavily inquiry-based. We did a lot less lecturing than we usually did. We had the kids playing more, which is all things that we know. And we've known for years, and we have been doing it for years, but we needed some more guidance on doing that. And the day that we spent with her just kind of, it clicked for us. Having looked at those books, they're amazing. The integration with the iPads and the technology, I mean, some of the stuff is flash-based, so we'll have to grab laptops and things like that to do some of the virtual labs and things like that. But the things that the gentleman was showing us about just different reading levels, you guys were just talking about gifted and lower kids and things like that, but to be able to, it modified some of the reading for each lexile, and it read some of it to them, depending on where their reading was at, and if they were able to answer questions about it. It like blew, in the 20 minutes that we had with this guy, it was like, oh my God, this is way too much. So I am just looking at it and using them, and the central questions are all there, it's all laid out for us, it has wonderful resources that were simply amazing.
So along with that, for the iPad, it's a Connected Ed app. And so the teachers then can download that assignment. And then if the students stay at home and do not have access to internet at home, they can complete all of that information without the internet at night. And then when they would come back to our system during the day, it would upload everything and then talk to the teachers that way via that app.
And you're using it not a lot of bugs. It's so
We
far.
haven't had a chance to use it
A little
that
bit.
much, but it looked pretty.
We haven't used the technology portions that much. I was very impressed with not only the integrated curriculum, but integrated with the technology. The use of the technology is multimedia. It's addressing different learning levels, different learning styles. As she mentioned before, the lady from Summit really did an excellent job of crystallizing in our heads all of the thoughts that we had about the shift that we really need to be doing and the students would really benefit from.
So in the training that they got, it's that three-dimensional learning, so it does take a lot of that inquiry. And so the part of the training that day that they received, it was how you deliver these science experiments differently, taking part of that three-dimensional and actually showing them, you know, this is how we need to get our students involved in this way, and really showing them that. And some of the experiments were really fun.
Well, and
It's more about what science
Right.
really
Really, truly is.
is.
Since I came into the district, I've always said, we need to do more labs, and we have such amazing facilities to be able to do those labs and to do these things, and to now have the backing of, you know, understanding it a little bit better, to know that this is what our kids need. The kids need to do it, and it's something we've always known, but to be able to do that a little bit better is what we're really excited about.
This is where we get our knowledge of science from, is from doing science. And so when you try to explain an idea or have students understand an idea that seems very foreign, so I don't know if I believe that. It's different than saying this is how we know this, or this is how you can learn this, or this is how you can try to verify this and address misconceptions.
Please explain how this is tied into STEM.
Oh, it's very heavily engineering based, because a lot of the NGSS standards are them actually building something. So another one of the things that we did this year, modeling and building and things like that, was we were talking about heat in 8th grade. So instead of us lecturing on heat, we had the kids build an insulated water bottle and actually test that to see which one of them held heat the longest. And so that engineering, and I had kids bringing in insulation from, God knows where they got it from. And you know, it was amazing. The kids that aren't normally into this were the ones that were in his enrichment, coming and stealing ideas from him, and then coming back to my class and putting it into practice. The kids that barely want to study were now into doing this. So it's very heavily engineering based, and especially as 8th grade, they can do that really well.
Can you tell me what grades this is for? Is it
It's all
just?
6, 7, and 8. But as it kind of grows, because as you, the way we kind of unpack the standards, you know, 6th grade, they will do some engineering, but they're still, you know, getting the grasps of science and things like that. By the time they get to us in 8th grade, we're still going to need to do some of the teaching, but they'll be able to do more of the engineering and more of the experiments and things like that. All of them will do more, but it's kind of basing one year, because she said it's kind of cyclical. So, yeah, spiral. So by the time they get to us in 8th grade, we'll be able to do.
Okay.
They should be more comfortable in doing those types of things.
Right. So is this, just so I'm going to try to summarize, this is a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science program that is less about, you were going to do earth science this year.
Right.
Okay. Forget about everything you learned last year. Now you're going to work on pre-biology, and then 8th grade you're going to work on chemistry. It's something that where things are more worked all the way through, and that you're more thematic based all the way through, where you're driven by deeper, bigger questions, which tie into Common Core standards or next generation science standards. So kids are exploring projects, and in doing so, they're looking at different aspects of science, different questions in science. There is and you mentioned there's a leveled reading as well?
For the textbook, yeah.
Okay, so that...
It is available to all kids then.
Right, and this is through McGraw-Hill, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay, so that...
I'm pretty certain.
Yes. Well, I'm just looking at it, you see, that was my key. This is something that they would have access to at home, so that they could provide the internet, they could, or they downloaded it to their iPad, they wouldn't be left out in the dark the cold test tube, wondering, well, what am I supposed to be doing now? Okay, my other question is, how does this tie into the new science classes we built at Parker? Is this something where a specific grade level then would use those classes? Are they dependent upon those science labs that you built, or is this how's this working?
The science labs in different areas of the building offer different things.
Okay.
And I think that some of the ones in what is now the 6th grade wing offer less, in my opinion.
Okay.
The physical makeup of the classroom itself, some of them are considerably smaller, have less sinks, like 8 sinks,
Right.
3 sinks.
In the 7th and 8th grade rooms, there are gas hookups and sinks and counters with outlets and things like that. And the 6th grade wing, everything's a little bit lower to the ground and
The
there
tables
isn't as
are-
much. And the tables are smaller and there's not as many sinks and things like that. And in looking at
Storage.
Yeah,
So in
storage.
eighth, in the 6th grade wing, there's not storage for, so in 8th grade, we've traditionally done chemistry, where
Right.
you had chemistry storage between the classrooms, where there's no storage for, there's cabinets within the classroom itself, but there's not a storage room between the classrooms as there is in what's now the 7th and 8th grade.
Right.
And as we're talking about through the grade levels doing more advanced things as you get to 8th grade, we utilize that lab a little bit differently than the 6th grade teachers might.
Okay, so then will the 6th graders stay where they are, or are they going to use the new facilities at all, or do we have a plan for that, or?
That's something we'll discuss administratively, as far as where classrooms go. We're in those discussions at this time. A quick question that I have in regards to those classrooms. How many labs do you do now in the 8th grade?
How many labs?
How many labs a week do you do?
Per week, I would like to say that we do more.
You do
that
3
we-
per week?
Currently,
No,
No.
I can't honestly say.
next year though, and I have, in looking at the curriculum and digging deeper, I've looked at it and there is a significant increase in labs. To the point where it was, I think, this year I can't even count, but I think when I looked at next year's, it was like 60 total for the whole school year. In addition to the way that we're talking about changing the way we teach is, like I was just doing a unit on sound, and so instead of me lecturing on sound, I got out the big tubs of water and the tuning forks and things like that, and they were actually playing with that kind of thing. So
How do you think this works?
Right.
Draw a model or create a model of how it's.
So I can see next year that we're doing 2 to 3 labs per week, because that's just changing the shift in our teaching. Is they're not learning from me talking.
So
As
you
much
think-
as I'm saying wonderful things, they're just not getting that.
You think next year will be more labs than?
Yeah,
It's
at least 2
in
to
the
3 per
curriculum.
week.
In the curriculum.
It's embedded in the curriculum that was brought forth to us to absolutely do more than
Which
at
is
least
weird.
2 a week.
Thrilled about.
Absolutely. That's what basically I was getting ready to ask, is this shift due to the fact, to this resource material, or is it due to the curriculum that's driving the need for the resource
I think it's a
material?
little bit of both. I think in the last few years, I've seen that the way I was teaching things isn't working anymore. And we know that, we have to shift to where the kids are. And so I think it's a need from needing to shift to meet the kids, in addition to meet the new standards and meet where we want them to go. You guys were just talking about the IB program. If we're gonna prepare them for the IB program, then we have to make this shift, and we have to do more labs so that they are ready, because what we've heard from HF is although they are prepared, their lab skills are not prepared. And the last articulation meeting I was at, he said they could definitely use more of the lab to prepare them for the IB program and things like that.
We worked extensively with Dr. Ward on unpacking the next generation science standards. And to really understand that, it takes a while. And like I said, to have a science expert come in, Tara, I forget her last name. Christoph. When she came in, that really helped to crystallize and to not just conceptualize it in your head, but to see it and to do it yourself, which is why we were able to, from that, then change our practice back at Parker so quickly because so we're extremely excited about one, the help in the curriculum, the direction of the curriculum, the next generation, and this I didn't expect to text those two
There's
minutes.
just some bad bonus.
That was like, wow, this could be tremendous.
We haven't approved anything yet.
We're talking your game over here.
That actually leads to my question. Just
Yes.
as I increase my own intelligence about the budget, where do things like this fall?
I'm glad you brought that up. That was my next question for the board. Do you remember when we discussed with the board about having expenses outside of the budget? We do not have this in the budget right now.
But if this would be approved on this year's budget, it is still in that budget. So
Correct.
this is still within that budget if we would approve this in June.
That is correct.
And what is are we in surplus? I mean, where are we with this year? Okay, so how much do we have this year to play with?
With this year, since this is only 54,000, my line item right now, I think that I
This
still.
is included in the $1.5 million deficit for this year. So, I mean, is the line item still there? Yeah. Are you still looking at a $1.5 million in a hole? Yeah.
But it's still within my budget.
My attitude, I heard.
That's all I look at.
How many guys do we have? All right. You know what? I would love to hear more about the discussion on the room placements with this, and as well as I would like to know, did they give any recommendations for how we could also seed this in our elementary school buildings? A couple years ago, I asked my then 5-year-old, what would you do if you won like the contest to have this new thing instead of another basketball court? He said we should have a mobile science lab on a car. And I thought, wow, actually that's a really good idea. So if we could somehow, and again, Fran, I don't need to get into the over budget, but if we could look into how we could support this really in the long range, so it's not just a case of, okay, you're out of 5th grade, now you can do some science. I think that would be a great
We could have
move.
talked 2 years ago, because ask him, I went at science labs in every school, so. Remember that? So, yes. So no, there are plans in K-5. It actually started in 5th grade this year to kind of seed, knowing that they were going towards this next year. So all 5th graders have actually been doing things with NGSS this year in all 4 of the elementary buildings to prepare them to what they were going towards with this integrated model next year. And last year, with preparation with the units of study, they were already working towards this. And then there will be more preparation this summer, and so more for NGSS is going to be coming out in the elementary 4 next year in preparation for this. So our move towards STEM will be starting in this 15-16 school year, because also word from the state is that we will be testing in science next year in preparation for the 16-17 year.
My last question regarding monies relates to, are there grants that we could be applying to help offset the cost of this?
So with Patricia Messersmith and the Museum of Science and Industry, there are free grants and training that came out in May that some of our teachers can apply for free training, and along with that then come a whole bunch of free supplies if our teachers do secure that spot with a grant. And then in August we'll be coming out more training with similar NGSS topics, and then if our teachers qualify for that, there will be more free supplies then with that training. And then with U of I Extension, there are some other things that we are working with in that same aspect. Also, we are always looking on the front with Michelle O'Connor, who is our science or STEM depot person. We're always looking for other grants with and through her that we're always searching for. So we are always along those STEM. And then as far as other ones, there are other grants that our post office making us aware of that we're always looking for.
Great.
What is the time frame for this quote?
The quote was good for 30 days, so I just have to get back to the consultant to let her know where we're standing with this to see. She gave it to us on May 3rd, I believe, so I just have to give her an update after tonight where we will be standing with this to see if I need a little bit of extension till the next board meeting, which is the 8th.
Board, are you okay with moving ahead with this?
Is this a one-time only fee that we would be paying?
No, that's what.
Until like this would age out, and then we would have to look for something else that would help support.
So board, everybody's okay with this? To move ahead?
I would support bringing this up. I would support it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on your agenda, discussion of board trainings. Mr. Duster, did you want to comment on this, or?
Yes, we had I had a meeting with Steve and Timmy in regards to board training since we have a new board. And what we've decided on a few topics, and what my question would be is, would you like us to send some dates out to try to have training in June for full board training? We have our new board orientation on Friday, but for full board training, going through information, I think that'd be quite useful for all of us.
And these are the trainings that our law firms do for us.
Our law firm would do this, Mr. Duster, yes.
Right. And as well as our other firm.
We have Izzo that we had talked about with the finance, and we would bring Fran in to have a discussion and answer that.
Okay. And what this would do is, certainly for new board members and for full board members, is that it would really give a broader perspective from legal points of view into different issues that we deal with as board members, and we'll encounter over the course of a year or 2 years.
For example, student records was a topic. I don't remember if we agreed on that. That was it. So would you like us to send dates?
I think that
For a
would
meeting in June? It's quite extensive. It will take quite, we could have more than one session for all of us.
A couple questions about that. The topics, I'm assuming obviously you looked at those topics based upon some of the things we were dealing with within the district. How long, how much time would we have left?
There weren't time stamps for each one. However, like homelessness, that was part of it.
Yeah.
That's something we're going to talk about. So things that the
They're
board has
topics.
brought, they're topics,
Okay.
and then there'd be discussion about it, and then we'd have questions, et cetera.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we can just sit around to try to figure out.
All right, so we'll send some dates out.
Well, who's doing the board orientation?
if you have.
Board members.
Oh, the board, we have 2 board members that are doing that, and that is Timmy and Christine, who will be coming in.
That's good for her.
Actually, it was a lottery, and put all 3 of your names
I'm just
in.
kidding.
Fairest way we could do it. Okay, so we'll send out some dates. Okay? All right.
Any further questions on that? Okay, next we have a discussion on the appointment of board speed representative. Did you want to discuss that? Or you want me to?
It just, we had, our last speed representative was Leah Bailey Langston, and in your board packet, we've gone ahead, it should say 2015-16 governing board meetings. but you'll see the meetings that the person that is appointed will have to attend. And it starts out July 23rd as a date, and they're all at 7 o'clock. So I know that if you want to have some discussion on that and have an appointment tonight, that would be wonderful. We will let Speed know who our governing board person is.
Okay, I've spoken to Mrs. Huckabee, and she has graciously accepted my recommendation that she be a representative.
Thank you.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you know where to go. We can get you that information.
Yes.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, next, we have a memo of understanding, a 12-month employee work year.
Yes. Fran, we can discuss this.
The collective bargaining agreement for 12-month employees, so basically just custodian, maintenance, and payroll and accounts payable are the only 12-month employees in the collective bargaining agreement. And it states their work year at 260 days, which works unless you have a leap year. And then there's 261. So we've spoken to the association, and they'll bring it up at their meeting next week. And our recommendation is just to increase their work year to 261 days and to pay them commensurate with their normal salary. Unless there's any question, pretty straightforward. But I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, next we have transportation fund transfer.
And this too is something that we spoke about. Now, for our new members, won't be quite so familiar with it. However, when we did the budget last year, and then we talked about levy, and we actually did the levy. Because property values have been on decline, what happened is, even though we are under the tax cap, so you could only increase by CPI, there are different rate ceilings in the different funds. And because property tax values the values went down, what happened was your rates went up. And you hit the rate ceilings in education and operations and maintenance. With plenty of room to still levy in transportation, but again, only in total getting 1.7%. Okay? So that we got the full big 1.7%, we levied as high as we could in education and operations and maintenance, and put the balance in the transportation fund with the understanding that at the end of the year, we were going to move some of those balances from transportation into ed and O&M, which is where the funds are actually needed. So that's what this is. This is the cleanup, this is the housekeeping. It will be a resolution. There will be a public hearing during your June 8th meeting. I will put, once I get kind of my nods of, yes, this is what we still want to do, I will put a notification in the newspaper identifying that we will have a public hearing on June 8th, and then you will pass a resolution transferring the funds from transportation fund to education and operations and maintenance, 500,000 and 500,000.
What is that posting period for that?
It has to be no less than 7 days, no more than 30. Yes.
Is the way 500,000 is depicted, is that are you supposed to reflect it that way? With 500, the number, and then 1,000?
Probably
It's
not.
a style I've never seen.
No, it might be very unique to me. Let me check that, because I've always done it in blocks of millions, to be honest with you. Yeah, so let me check the resolution draft. Yeah, let me check on that.
Stuck.
Yeah.
Okay. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you. Next, we have, next item, board meeting board meeting minutes / video presentation. Suggestion, recommendation.
Well, I don't have any recommendations. This was brought up at a previous meeting for discussion at a committee of the whole for the board. So this is for the board to discuss. in regards to minutes and video.
I think that our question was not video, it was streaming, right?
It was-
live streaming of the meetings while they're going on.
Yeah, but it was twofold, so when I initially brought that up, and it was about, for two reasons. We started talking about the minutes, and how do we go to simpler, kind of cleaner minutes, that are a little bit more sterile, but allowing for the opportunity to videotape the meetings, preference being streaming. And so the question was, you know, is it something that we could do here? A lot of technology, so can we do it? If so, what is the right mechanism? And that was it.
So you wanted the stream to be live that night?
That was one of the things. So I said, you know, I'm sorry, I'd like to have this videotape and then post it somewhere so people can see it. Ideally, love to have it in the conversation, well, not in the conversation, I'm sorry, but in the board meeting as what's happening. But didn't know all of it, just to make that happen.
Okay.
So that would be under our technology department?
Yeah, that's, I'll have to discuss that with our technology department and be back. So any more about videos?
Yeah, and then we talked about the tool that we actually have already, which is the board docs, that they have possibly a tool or service that we could utilize. And since we already purchased that, is that an option for us, and what might that look like? And, you know, I just want to look at some other things. Just there's so many different board meetings that are on YouTube, where you can pull up board meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what does that look like, and how to best, and with the whole purpose of it, and not videotape, but we talk about transparency, we talk about engaging our community, and just, you know, we have a meeting that of the public, and that
In the public.
thank you, and stay true to that. So that was the main purpose, is to give our constituents an opportunity to see, interact, and hear what's going on. And then also, so that there's no question about what was said and what was not said, and what they're missing.
Perfect. Okay, anything else about videos?
I think the technological capability and any costs associated with the different options that have been talked about, including streaming, but not limited to streaming, videoing, and anything else that might be out there.
If I may, I've actually looked into this in the last few weeks. Our LT version of Board Docs offers a free link to YouTube.
Our LT version.
There's two different versions of Board Docs, like levels, you know, LT and LT plus, or, you know, whatever the plus version is. Our version comes with it's included in the cost. We can have a link to either YouTube, Vimeo, or Swagit. Or Swagit is actually more of a professional company where they install a stationary video camera that would do live streaming. That's, I think, is in the tens of thousands. YouTube is free, and the link to YouTube, if we were to use a district video camera, upload it that night, it would be archived in YouTube, where we could get a link immediately for people to see, well, what happened at the meeting. That would be a free and easy thing we could do almost immediately. Vimeo offers 3 different packets. The lowest, I think, is free. The middle one is $65 a year, and the other one is $200 a year, so that you can actually stream your video through Vimeo. And then, of course, you can have a link to that if you click on that through Board Docs as well. But, you know, so in terms of just archiving our meetings, if we tape them, it doesn't cost a dime, because we can get that through YouTube, which is a free service. In terms of streaming, that I don't know how much memory we use. I think that the bonus packet with Vimeo for $200, I believe it's a year, it could be a month, is, I believe, 100 gigabytes. I don't know how you would, what would be 2 hours or 3 hours of video from this meeting, or how detailed you want the video to be, but certainly it would capture the audio, and I think that would fall under even the free service that they provide, their introductory level.
Okay, we will look that up, bring it to the count in June.
Okay.
Okay, now the other thing, since if that's something we'd be doing as far as videoing or streaming, the minutes. According to law, minutes are just a summary, they're very vague. You just need to take the votes, give a summary of what the action item was, what time the meeting started, what time it adjourned. So if we were to do that, is that how you want the minutes? What's your pleasure on it?
I would think that if we have the video, that we wouldn't need to have elaborate minutes. We would just have, just like a skeletal understanding or summary of what happened, almost like an agenda that had a little bit more elaboration. But certainly, get some sort of video that could easily take the place of that.
Well, they don't take the place of
Well,
written minutes.
I mean in terms of the written elaboration.
I'd recommend that we just follow the procedure outlined in the coming to order book that we all have and we've all read a million times. It's clear, it's simple, it's legal, and it's already outlined.
I'll give you.
I have to recommend that either, so.
Okay, but I don't know.
It's probably not already. but-
Oh.
I
Please put it with me in
actually
meetings.
purchased a new edition for everyone. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of coming to order,
Page 14 and 15.
one of the things we would like to do, which we discussed,
That's important.
last week, I believe the week before, was that we would like all of us to read one of the 13 chapters of Coming to Order and just present a short, 3 to 5 minute summary of the ideas covered in Coming to Order. And if there's any discussion following, that would be great for a few minutes, and then move on as a part of our regular committee as a whole. I will take the first 2 chapters, as the first one's very small, and I can marry with the second one. And Ms. Odom has offered to take the second. So it'll be the first 2 months that we did. Oh, I'm sorry, third.
Who's the second?
Me, I'm the first and second.
First and second.
So we would be looking for people to volunteer to say, I really want to take that 4th chapter. I believe in that 5th chapter. And I think that would be a great exercise for us as board members, and certainly in the cycle of your first year as new board members, to have a deeper understanding of our role and our function here in the district.
We're going to switch that since you read chapter 3 a million times already.
Perfect.
She's going to do that.
Fantastic.
Wait, hold on. Maybe 4 or 3?
There's no mad rush tonight.
Nobody take it on your own. That's actually really good. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's a great, and then I have new books for everybody. So. All right, Lisa, you're doing fine. You just want to do the chapters now? There's 11 total chapters.
Just sign me up for whatever. I mean, I don't know one chapter from the other right now, so.
I hear the law, Jack.
Yeah, great.
All right. Shall 6 okay then?
Sure.
Okay. 7? Okay. Lucky 7?
I had my eye on 14.
That's the new edition.
That's the appendix. You want to do 8?
Agnostic. Pick one and assign it to me.
John will be 8. All right, and then we'll come back. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, John.
I'd like to add an agenda item.
Okay.
If I may, I'd move to add an agenda item for executive session to discuss matters of personnel.
Tonight, okay. We do not.
You don't have to have it on the agenda, you just have to have quorum votes on it.
So motion, we have a second?
We do, I just have a question.
A second.
Sure.
No,
I'm sorry.
it's, we have the executive session, so I didn't bring the tool with me, so we have to adjourn for like 2 to 3 hours, so we have to get it.
Pretty good point.
Okay, fine, I just have to go get it, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting Bob waiting for,
Understood.
Do I have a second?
do we have another
Yeah, a second.
recorder here?
We do.
We do have another one?
Mm-hmm.
The charge?
Oh, the recorder, no, we do not.
Okay.
Okay, I have a solution. I mean, I think there's an app on my, something that we could use. So we can record this.
Yeah, that, and if you want to-
Yep. Can I have a motion and a seconder?
We have a
Yeah,
motion and a second. Okay, so, do we need to take a roll call?
Okay, here we go. Odom?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Huckabee?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Marks? Yes. Horace?
Yes.
So moved. We will be going to executive session for 10 minutes, 20 minutes? What does it take us?
15.
15 minutes. We will be back out in 15 minutes.